Elvis, out in theaters, new biopic from Baz Luhrmann, director of Moulin Rouge and The Great Gatsby, who this time does the life story of none other than Elvis Presley, starring Austin Butler and Tom Hanks. It's almost a straight biopic, covering most of Elvis's life from his early childhood and fascination with black music and trying to combine it with white country, through his early days on stage and being discovered by his afterwards longtime manager Colonel Parker, and then through the lower and darker stages of his career until the final run of being locked in the golden cage of Las Vegas, playing show after show for hotel guests until the untimely death resulting from many health problems and drug abuse. And I say almost straight biopic because there are two things that I think make it seem unique. The first one is framing the story through the lens of Colonel Parker, the carnival promoter turned music manager who narrates the entire story for us. And it is an interesting lens to look through because on the one hand we're still led to believe that the man admired Presley for his talents and drive, but also, much more so, treated him like a golden cow, the money-making machine. Over the years, Parker has essentially sucked Elvis dry in financial terms and locked him into terrible contracts, which certainly played a major part of his eventual downfall. So essentially, we're examining the story of an American hero, generational hero, through the eyes of a villain, the villain of his story. Secondly, the thing that sets Elvis apart from most other biopics is the absolutely frenetic, chaotic energy it exhibits in its pacing, editing, color use, various montages, and electrifying music. I swear, the first 40 minutes of the film leave you breathless because there is simply no room to take a breath. I mean, in terms of the pacing of the early parts of the film, the thing that it reminded me most of was Mad Max Fury Road, weirdly enough, which was also just non-stop action. The story here just runs forward and forward. It's generally very electric and eclectic also in the way it's put together. In some ways it reminded me of Rocketman, staying in the genre of biopics, but it also brings to mind other Baz Luhrmann films. I mean, his flair and style are unmistakable. It really feels like a roller coaster ride in the way that it sweeps you and takes you along with it to experience the story. And the story is a good one too. I personally knew of Elvis and knew some of his music, like everyone does, but I wasn't familiar with his story and found it quite engrossing and at the same time very sad to realize, on the one hand, how amazing he was at pulling influences and music styles from certain genres and then mixing them together to create his own thing, and how much of an electric persona he was on stage and what a showman he could be at his best when he put his heart into it. And then on the other hand, the extent of the tragedy that was the exploitation of Elvis at the hands of Colonel Parker, how he was responsible for so many awful things. The failed rebrand of Elvis into a family-friendly musician, the lack of international tours, confinement to the Vegas hotels in the late stages of career. One has to wonder just how different Presley's life would have been if not for Parker's sway that he had over the vocalist, and be sad that it wasn't. Performance-wise, Austin Butler is fantastic. He nails the voice, the movements and the charm, but he also brings a whole lot of vulnerability and softness to the role. Tom Hanks is strange. He's doing a weird accent, which is explained as the character actually being Dutch. But after the film, I found out that interviews with the real Colonel Parker are available on YouTube, and turns out that the real man sounded much more normally, so I'm honestly not sure what Hanks was doing there. It was a bit distracting, I'm not gonna lie. The cinematography and editing and everything else about the production design, like costumes and makeup, all great, no complaints there. I also enjoyed just how much blues, R&B and soul we got to hear as performed, not just by Elvis, but also by black artists that he took from. What I'm not so sure about was the use of modern music in several scenes of the film. I found that weird and distracting, but I guess it's to be expected from Luhrmann, who essentially based the entire Gatsby soundtrack around around that idea. So, not my jam. All in all, though, Elvis is a solid film. It is long, 2 hours 39 minutes long, but I think it moves at a quick enough pace not to be boring, and really immerses you in the life story of one of the most important figures in American pop culture.